Welcome. In front of me I have the HUAWEI P40 Lite, and it's the 5G version, so the upgraded one. And today I'm gonna go over unboxing along with an overview of the phone itself. So starting off, let's pop it open. Packaging, just a typical box from HUAWEI, nothing really special here. Then the phone itself, just gonna take it out and set it to the side for now. Get that out of the way. Then we get some paperwork. Again, nothing special here. No one really cares about the paperwork. Then we get the SIM eject tool. So throw that to the side, nothing in here. And then we got the accessories. So we got a brick. Now this is a fairly nice one. It's a 40-watt charger. So for a somewhat like a budget to a mid-range device, I really like the fact that they stuck around and keep including the 40-watt bricks. It's still better than some other flagship phones do. For instance, like Galaxy Fold, which costs about 10 times more, and it includes basically half of that in charging. So then we got the charger itself, or the cable I mean, and I will mention the cable that they include is coated in purple right here, as you can see. Hopefully it doesn't look blue on the camera. Kind of does, but whatever. So you'll see that it is coated in a color there, and if you use this charger and cable, you'll get the max charging speed. If you use basically any kind of other cable, it doesn't work with the super fast charging. Now the way you can know that it is charging at the max speed is when you plug it in, it will literally show you the percentage and then dot and then just the decibels of percentage that it is at, and this will be basically visibly going up. So at that point you know you're using the correct cable along with the correct charger. Any other cable, like I said, will not start that, so you'll just have that it's charging and current, for instance, like 30% and nothing. If you use this, it will be 30% point, for instance 5.7, 5.8, 5.9. It will be going up. Then apart from that, just throw that out of the way. We also got some cable headphones, and as a surprise, the phone actually has a headphone jack, so you can use your headphones if you have better ones than this, which probably wouldn't be hard to find better than this. So yeah, now personally I think including headphones is a bad choice. I would rather have that price of them including headphones be put into something different. For instance, like not including a 2 megapixel sensors that are basically useless. That's probably a better choice. So yeah, so that's basically all we got in the box. Let's turn on the device itself. So while it's turning on, we can go over the features. So the back, this one is the black version, or as they call it, it's midnight black. And as you can see, the key difference between the previous version or the P40 Lite non-5G is the fact that the cameras there were in a square, so basically 2x2, while these ones are all going down, and it looks like the bump on here is a little bit bigger than it was on the P40 Lite. Now that might be caused also by the fact that the cameras are better here, or at least one of them. I'm gonna quickly go through the setup process right here. As you can see, I'm skipping most of this, don't really care. Trying to just get the access to home screen. And there we go. So now it's set up. So let's start off with the display. While we're already looking at it, this is a 6.5 inch display, and it's just a 1080p, or precisely 1080 by 2400. Just a typical display in 2020, I would say. Basically all flagships, majority of them, along with mid-range devices, are using this resolution, and honestly there is no need for anything higher than that, in my opinion. Now when it comes down to it, it's a 83.8% screen to body ratio, so you're getting a fairly minimal bezels, which you can see clearly right here. So you have a little bit of a chunky chin, but that's about it. Other than that, everything looks really nice. It also has a 405 pixels per inch. That's because of the resolution, so it's a fairly dense display. Now if you have no idea how resolutions look and what they affect, basically the same resolution you have is most likely on your monitor from your computer. If you have something like a typical just a tower PC with a standalone monitor for it. Majority of those devices or monitors, for instance, like at work, majority of them are using a 1080p display. Okay. And also the screen is HDR10 certified. Now honestly, this I would say means almost nothing on here. I mean, it's an LCD IPS display, so don't expect anything outstanding here. The certification here is just more for look at us, we got the certification. You won't be getting any super deep blacks. As you can see, this device is, I believe, right now maxed out in brightness, and I am indoors in a fairly dark room, and the only light in here is the spotlight right here and just a tiny light behind me, which they barely do the job of lighting up the room. And this display already kind of seems a bit dim, to be honest, so in direct sunlight I believe this will be just a complete nightmare to use. But I might be wrong, but honestly it's a LCD, so I don't expect any kind of miracles here. If this would have been an AMOLED, then that's a different game. So moving on to the next part, it's going to be the camera setup. So at the front we got a 16 megapixel wide sensor that shoots at 1080p 30, and this is just a just a typical HUAWEI sensor, nothing really here. At the back we got an upgrade in terms of the camera setup. So before, let me quickly lock the device. So I'm going to compare it to the previous version, if I can call that a previous version, the non-5G version. Honestly, I would have expected them to be basically the same, with just a difference of the newer one using a 5G chip, but that is not the case. They're basically like two different devices. So number one, this one is bigger. The screen is bigger comparing to the previous one. Screen was at 6.4, this one is 6.5, so just a 0.1 inch bigger display. Nothing really drastic here. Probably something that you won't even see the difference in, but still it's a difference. The resolution is also a little bit different. The old one was using a 1080p by 2310, so a little bit smaller. And in terms of cameras, the main sensor was a 48 megapixel, while this one here is a 64 megapixel. So there's probably some of the biggest changes along with the chip. The old one was using a Kirin 810, while this one is using a Kirin 820, which is a 5G chip. And going back to the cameras, which I was going to focus on, with the 64 main sensor, wide sensor, you also have a 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro, and 2 megapixel depth. And with that sensor you can shoot at 4K 30 frames, something that the old one couldn't do, and 1080p 30. Now there is no 60 unfortunately, so don't hope for that. And also I will mention that the 2 megapixel macro and 2 megapixel depth are complete garbage. Anyway you see a 2 megapixel any sensor basically on your device, especially in a mid-range, it's just a company trying to boost up the number of cameras that they have just so it sells better. Those sensors are basically useless. They contribute in nothing, and with that 64 megapixel sensor you can take better macros than you can take with that 2 megapixel macro. So basically instead of 4, look at this as 2 sensors instead of 4. You're not going to be getting much use out of the both 2 megapixel depth and macro. And honestly, if you get this device and you start taking photos, try to stay away from taking it with the 2 megapixel macro. Those photos, like I said, will come out looking less detailed than if you take a normal photo at a further distance with a 64 megapixel and just kind of zoom in on it. So just a heads up here. and let me actually quickly maybe demonstrate it so we can get a really good idea of what we are dealing here with. So just let me get something. There we go, maybe this receipt right here, so you can see what I mean. As you can see, this is just a receipt right here, and we unlock it, open up the camera. So we're gonna start off with the a normal photo right here, which let me quickly check what the setting is at. So aspect ratio, video, frame rate, and yes, it looks like we don't got any options for quality right here. I'm trying to basically check what sensors I'm using right now, which probably would be easier just to block it, which I don't think I'm using the main one, or maybe I am. I guess we'll see in a second. Now let me quickly also wipe it off so it isn't dirty or anything, and see how close I can get. So this is the main one, it's not the macro. It's okay. I'm just checking if this is sharp, and it looks sharpish. So now let's go into more, go into macro or super macro. Can't really get it without causing a shadow, so I'm gonna move the light. And let's see. Let's go back to the gallery right here and get more prompts. So obviously you can get closer in. Let's look at the quality though. If I can actually get in closer, that would be really nice. So let me actually try that again with just a normal one. My hands are a little bit shaky, so that's not helping me. And let's check this out. So I use a zoom so it gets even closer. And let's compare them. So this is the macro. Looks fairly blurry. This is the 40 or 60, what is it? 64 megapixel sensor. And see where's the price. Let me try that again just so we have the same kind of area. I believe that's what I was capturing. I'm gonna do the same with the macro right now. Okay, so let's see how they compare. So this is the macro right now, as you can see, because I can actually zoom in really close in here. And I mean, it's looking okay. It's nothing really special. And this is the actual 40 or 64 megapixel zoom. Now this one looks actually sharper, but the text looks a little bit less well, detailed, or maybe not detailed, but it seems a little bit more washed out in terms of colors. Honestly, probably in terms of accuracy and colors, this is more accurate because this is the back side of a receipt and it is kind of faint. You can barely see it on the camera. So this seems a little bit too detailed. It's almost like I'm taking the front of it. So yeah, but honestly, I do have to say they're fairly close at the moment, just by capturing it. It seems like this one just gets a little bit blurrier. Maybe that's because I'm zooming it close, but that's kind of what macro is supposed to do. So yeah, nothing really much to say here. Now I'm gonna do also a comparison to an actual macro lens that uses, in my case I believe it's an ultra wide sensor and it's a 16 megapixel. It is also a Huawei device, but just an older one, the Mate 20 Pro. So let's go into super macro and also get the light and see how that will compare. So this one I can basically get as close to even see the grain of the paper. So that is kind of how it's supposed to work. That is what super or macro lens is supposed to do. As you can see, all these weird grooves in here, that's just the paper grooves. So that is how it's supposed to look like, and that is something that you will not get out of this phone whatsoever. So that is just a comparison of what they're trying to sell and just by marketing it. And yeah, so once we actually got the cameras out of the way, at least the front one, or well, in this case actually the back, we can now turn on the front and see how it deals with me. So let's quickly get rid of this and this. Let's go with So this is kind of a drastic scenario with the light being only on my face, everything being super dark around. But honestly, dealt with it fairly okay. It is a little bit saturated, which I can see by the business reddish right here. Nothing too extreme. It does look actually fairly okay. So the front-facing camera seems to do a okay job. Not going to complain about that one for a mid-range device with a 16 megapixel sensor. This is doing a okay job. Yeah. So moving on, we're going to go into the actual specs of it. So like I said before, the device comes with a Kirin 820, which is a 5G chip, and also it has 128 gigabyte built-in storage. That's the only option, along with 6 gigabytes of RAM. And you can expand the storage further, I believe by 200 and what is it, 40 or 56 gigs. But it is using the Huawei's nano memory, which is just, you won't be able to use your typical SD card. You have to get it specifically from that Huawei or any kind of off-brand that produces those tiny little SIM size cards, which is, I honestly don't support that. It is just utter garbage that you have to do this, but it is what it is. So if you want it, you have to basically buy their nano memory. But then moving on to a little bit brighter side of it, like I said before, it has the 40-watt charger, which allows the phone to be charged to 70% in 30 minutes. That is advertised, at least. And honestly, based on my device, also being Huawei, it does seem to charge really quickly. I think I plugged in my phone for like 10 minutes and it charged to about like 20-something% from almost being dead. So they do charge fairly quickly, and that is a real, I really like that, the super fast charge here. And it also does something that I wasn't expecting, which is a 5-watt reverse charge. So if you plug in the device with a cable and you plug in another device, so you basically have to have 2 Type-C cables. In this case, you can basically give the power of your device to another one just to charge it up. So if you have the need for that, I guess you always have almost a power bank with you, kind of how I'll explain it. And apart from that, there's also a side-mounted fingerprint, which is the same thing as the previous one, also had a side-mounted fingerprint, and it is the double power button, so you can use it as a fingerprint along with the power key. And apart from that, there is not much more to say about the device. It comes in 3 different colors, so you have the Space Silver, Crush Green, and Midnight Black. Midnight Black is the one that I have. And probably lastly, the elephant in the room. It is a Huawei device, so it doesn't come with Play Store. And I've tried to install Play services on it, but it seems like either Huawei is trying to really make it hard, or Google maybe, I'm not really sure. So anytime there is some kind of way of getting Google Play services on here, it gets patched up fairly quickly and basically becomes obsolete. So you're constantly in that search for a way to try to install them. That is assuming you really care about Google Play services. If you don't, you'll have to put up with the app gallery, which is the equivalent of the Google Play Store, which is the difference of it having less apps. I'm gonna quickly connect to Wi-Fi. So give it a moment. Yep, okay, next, agree, skip, later. As you can see, there we go. That's basically their store for applications, and you get majority of the typical apps that you do, but there is some apps that are missing from here. For instance, I really love something like a smart launcher. I honestly just cannot use an Android device without it, so let's see. Let's type in smart. Not now. Love that pressing not now does nothing. Okay, so I have to say that Smart Launcher is now on here. That is just something that I knew. Stop it. That I know that before was not accessible. So it is now here. And if you're wondering, for instance, if the app that you're looking for is not accessible here, and you're wondering what it is dependent on, it is basically dependent solely on the developer wanting to port their device to Huawei. So there probably could be instances where the developer will be flat out against it and will not do it, and your app may never see the light of day on Huawei device. So keep that in mind. But Huawei is constantly trying to get the apps on here, really basically bothering the developers to port their application, so all the Huawei users can use their store and get basically what any kind of other Android device has. And lastly, it's going to be the price tag, and it comes at about 500 or 500, what am I saying, 259.99 euros. Now this price tag is in euros, and the phone isn't sold in US anymore. That's because of the China ban, obviously. And the previous one, I believe, was the last device that was being sold in US. And if you're wondering the price difference between those, it's about that $60. The previous one was coming around $200. So this one is coming a little bit higher, I believe. Euros is, I think, a little bit stronger than the dollar. So it's about $60, maybe $70 more. Now the question is, are you really in that need of number one, a 5G device to pay a little bit more for it? And number two, I don't really, or maybe put it this way, I don't think this device is worth paying that $60 extra dollars if, for instance, you can get the Huawei P40 Lite without the 5G. At the moment, the infrastructure isn't necessarily the greatest for it, at least where I'm from, and I personally, for me, living in a fairly decent city, I wouldn't be really benefiting from it at all, and paying more for it doesn't seem to be that great of an idea. So yeah. Now also, personally, I am really dependent on Play Store and all the Play services, which I really came to be accustomed to. So losing them would be a little bit of a bummer, which I kind of wouldn't want to put up with. So that's just my personal opinion here. But if we're talking about purely the device itself and without any kind of political problems that it brings, whatever the US is doing with it, the device runs fine. Camera is decent, nothing really mind-blowing here. It does the job. Won't be winning any awards here for best photos or anything like that. It's just here, like I said before, also the two sensors that it has are basically useless, which I also kind of showed in comparison. And apart from that, the device is just purely mediocre, which probably fits in with the kind of shelf that it's trying to cater to, which is a mid-range device. Although the price isn't necessarily mid-range, so it's approaching a little bit higher from the mid-range devices that I've reviewed in a recent timing, which some of them, for instance like Realme, come with Google Play services, and in certain cases are even better than this device at a cheaper price range. So it feels right now like the Huawei is still trying to bring out devices, pump them out, even though they're lacking in features that probably a lot of people are looking for. They're still trying to keep that higher price that they were selling their devices at about like what, a year ago. And it seems a bit of a kind of misguided idea here that people will still buy their devices at a higher price range just because they used to be good and used to be respected, I guess, which personally I wouldn't buy it anymore. That's just my opinion here. But like I said, the device itself, there's nothing against it. It works really well. It's just a typical mid-range device at a slightly higher price range than I would be willing to pay for a mid-range device. And that being said, at the end of the day, it's your choice if you want a Huawei device. And for instance, if that headphone jack is really worth that much to you. So yeah. So if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.